Former Alameda Research CEO Caroline Ellison and FTX co-founder Gary Wang have both pled guilty to charges associated with FTX's collapse. The SEC and CFTC have also announced charges against the two, saying that Ellison manipulated the price of the FTT token. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams says both are cooperating with investigators. Former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried was charged with 8 crimes earlier this month. We've discussed those at length. They include money laundering, wire fraud, and securities fraud. He is being extradited from the Bahamas to the U.S. and is in FBI custody. Zach, a lot to unpack here. What do you got?
So much to unpack. Kids, if you're ever in a criminal conspiracy involving $10 billion that are vaporized, especially from customers, snitch as fast as possible. That's the story here. Everyone associated with FTX and Alameda turned snitch on Sam Bankman-Fried, and they're probably going to have a much more comfortable life because of it, while their former colleague rots in a prison cell somewhere for a long time. That, for me, is the takeaway. Looking at some of this stuff, it's pretty wild. Bankman-Fried was flown in from the Bahamas into the New York area last night. A lot of people were closely watching flight trackers on the internet to see where he was headed. Apparently, he touched down over in Westchester and is making his first appearance in New York in court today for a presentment that initiates the legal proceedings here in the U.S. after some complicated back and forth over whether or not he was going to make his way over here from the Bahamas. So that's what people are watching. I know CoinDesk has a reporter on the ground at the courthouse in the Southern District of New York. So we're going to watch that for updates later today. And yeah, I don't know, Caroline and the co-founder, they may have found themselves a pretty sweet deal. I don't know, Will, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they found themselves a really good deal, right? Like if you look at the charges they possibly were going to have, I think it was like 250 years for Caroline, and it was like 50 years for Gary if they were just charged for what they're doing in the first place. They went to the different administrations, the DOJ, and they're getting off the hook more or less. So Caroline Ellison is looking at getting some fines slapped on her, disgorgement for any ill-gotten gains, and then also she's not going to be able to trade anything on behalf of other people, only on behalf of herself. There's some redacted parts of this as well, so maybe there's further charges, but for what I see right now, it doesn't look like there's any prison time in the plea deal that either of them signed in order to turn on SBF, which to me looks like the DOJ is really playing hard on one character. And we've seen this in the past in crypto history, right? If we go back in the history books, we see that typically what the DOJ does is they slap hard down on one figure. I think the book is coming down on SBF. I don't know what the charges are going to end up being in terms of like sentencing, but we do know the charges in terms of like the character of them, right? Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud people, against SEC, securities violations, CFTC, commodities violations. This is going to be a hefty prison sentence, possibly life, a few life sentences. We don't really know yet, but this is going to be hefty. And it's wild to see that Caroline and Gary, who were part of this, right? They were the defendants in this, named over and over again. They're going to get off more or less okay from what we see right now, even though they were doing this on behalf of SBF, right? They coded in the back end the ability to trade money and not be liquidated. Caroline was dumping FTT and manipulating the price on behalf of SBF. So I think it's a little interesting to see what they got off so easily based on that. Zach, give it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, those details that you just shared are from the SEC complaint, like some details that lay out, these people were intimately involved in something that ultimately ended up, being a criminal conspiracy. So I think you can also mention, Ryan Salami, who was kind of early to sound the alarm, notifying authorities in the Bahamas that something was awry. That was before the bankruptcy initially was initiated. So there's definitely this cast of characters that we're learning more about. It's not just SBF here. We're going to hear more from Gary Wang, from Caroline Ellison, potentially from Salami at some point. So obviously this involves sort of a not just one person, but obviously I think you're right, Will, that the figurehead is going to be the person who's dinged the hardest in terms of the legal proceedings against this outright fraud. Yeah, this story isn't going away anytime soon. Again, maybe this is we talked about the season finale, right? The arrest was the season finale. Maybe this is the beginning of season 2, and let's see if the sophomore season can also bring some intrigue. Jen, what do you think?
Well, first I want to say, Will, if we decide to commit a crime with everyone on the hash, we need to exclude Zach because he's going to snitch on us. And we're going to end up in jail. So Zach, you are out of any
All right,
Aren't
I
you
don't
a
want any,
lawyer?
I don't want any
Business.
part of your crimes, lady.
You're
No,
supposed
no
to be a
way.
lawyer.
Nuh-uh.
You're supposed to protect us. You're supposed to be on the
I
outside
am
of this,
supposed to
Jen.
protect. Well, that's my first protection. Zach's out.
Hey, prisoner's dilemma. You ain't getting me. Nuh-uh.
I want to remind our audience of Caroline Ellison's attorney. So Stephanie Avakian is representing Caroline Ellison. She's the former director of the SEC's Division of Enforcement. I think that this is how Caroline was able to get such a good deal. I think if you know the inner workings of the SEC, possibly still have personal relationships there, this lawyer was able to negotiate some of the ongoings that we're going to see. The article also mentioned that those tweets that Caroline published when CZ was questioning the value of FTT, saying he was going to sell tokens. When Caroline said, you know what, I'll buy those back from you for $22, the allegations are that was at Sam Bankman-Fried's request. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out, how Sam was trying to pull the strings behind the scenes. And ultimately, I think that this PR tour he's been going on is going to really hurt the case. And we're going to see that play out. Will?
Last thoughts on this. Sam looks rough coming out of that prison, right? Unshaven. Zach, you had a tweet this morning, no shoelaces, which is for obvious reasons being in a prison, but just like he looks rough right now. The man is being flown back, 2 beefy FBI guys holding on to him. This is not the SBF that we're used to, the SBF that was on stage with Tom Brady and Bill Clinton not even 9 months ago. Shocking turn of events, and I do like to see these pictures because I think it really puts everything into perspective. Zach, to you.
Perp walks for days. Perp walks for days.